You can go ahead and share screen.
Yeah, hi everyone. Sorry, just this technical stuff. Yeah, let me pull. Can everyone can see a screen right now?
Yes, yeah, we can see. Thank you. And also, Arena, sorry if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, I'm Irina Osacha. I'm a refugee health navigator at uh, health education team. Yeah, I'm hopefully this training will be helpful to better navigate and understand all the policy letter. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We can go to the next slide. All right, so we will go over some key terms and definitions, where to find ORR policy letters and how to review them, eligibility, the ORR documentation guide, some sample documentation, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. Next slide, please. Okay, so starting with key terms and definitions. Next slide. Okay, I'm sure many of you are familiar with some of these terms, but we're just going to go over them anyways. So as you may know, a refugee is a person who's been forced to flee their country due to persecution, war, or violence. Refugees are unable or unwilling to return to their home country because of a fear of persecution based on race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. Refugees apply for protection in the US outside of the US, so they're not here when they apply. And usually they can apply in refugee camps or in other countries of asylum and are admitted to the US after passing screening and interviews. An asylee is a person who meets that same criteria of a refugee, but is already present in the US or at a US port of entry when they apply for asylum. And asylees, like refugees, also have fears around persecution. Um, and also, an asylee is a person who has already been granted asylum. So this means that their application for asylum has been approved by a judge and they are eligible for ORR benefits. Asylum seeker is an individual who's applied for asylum status, is seeking protection from persecution or fear of persecution. However, they have not received a decision on their application. Unfortunately, asylum seekers are not eligible for services through this grant or for other ORR programs. And Afghan humanitarian parolee is an individual from Afghanistan who was granted temporary entry into the US for urgent humanitarian reasons or significant public benefit. Typically, most people who are Afghan parolees were given that status after the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan in 2021. Humanitarian parole is a temporary status and does not provide a direct path to permanent residency, although Afghan parolees can apply for asylum or other legal status once they're here. So they do qualify for ORR benefits such as health services and cash assistance. Next slide, please. All right, Afghan special immigrant visa holder. So an Afghan SIV holder is an individual from Afghanistan who worked with the US government and its allies in Afghanistan during the war. These are often people who supported the US as interpreters, translators, or contractors and have been granted special immigrant visas to relocate to the US due to threats to their safety. So this is a visa that grants them lawful permanent residence status upon entry to the US, and they are also are eligible. It's a really hard acronym to say over and over. And for Ukrainian humanitarian parolees, these are Ukrainian nationals granted temporary entry to the US for urgent humanitarian reasons, often in response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And this status also does not provide a direct path to permanent residency. While parolees are eligible for services, they'll have to apply for a longer term residency once they're here. And just some other terms to be aware of. An alien number is a unique 7, 8, or 9-digit number assigned to people by the Department of Homeland Security. The temporary protected status is a temporary immigration status provided to nationals of specifically designated countries. It allows migrants whose home countries are considered unsafe to live and work in the United States for a temporary but extendable period of time. Unfortunately, this group is also not ORR eligible. And ORR, the Office of Refugee Resettlement, is a federal office housed within the Federal Department of Health and Human Services, Administration for Children, Youth, and Families. And they promote the health, well-being, and stability of refugees, unaccompanied children, and other eligible individuals. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we'll go over where to find ORR policy letters. I'm going to share this link in the chat with you. So this is the official website. Once you click on that site, you could click on Office of Refugee Resettlement, and then you'll go to Policy and Guidance. Then you'll go to Policy Letters. And once you're there, you can see the date. You can see the policy letters and the date that they were last updated. Could you go to the next slide, please? I think it shows it there. Yeah, so sorry, one back. Okay. One more. Okay, this one. So this, where it's circled in red, shows how recently the page has been updated. Okay, next slide. Okay, and here with this green, with the green arrow, you can see that they are listed as the oldest at the bottom, and then it goes up to the newer policy letters. Next slide. Okay, so policy letters are the official policy, whereas the Dear Colleague letters are more of like a letter that explains the official communications. So for Dear Colleague letters, you'll also go to that same website and you can find them there. And you can scroll down to fiscal year 2024 to find specific information about the Refugee School Impact, Refugee Support Services funding allocation. And now I will pass it to Arena to go over how to review the policy letters.
Yeah, thank you, Jasmine. And we prepare some tips and tricks how to better navigate in a policy letter. And for first time, it could be confusing. I think first tip, it's as Jasmine mentioned before, policy letter and Dear Colleague letter, it's different. So first of all, you need to divide this into different categories. And other helpful tool is to find the policy letter organized by the year. For example, majority of policy letter related to Ukrainian humanitarian parole, they was created in 2022, but some of them can have additional revision like in 2023 or 2024, depending on other supplements program which was created by ORR. So it's also helps to navigate. And as you see, 22, it's mean like which years this was producing and number of a policy letter of this fiscal year. And how to review a policy letter. So first of all, looking for a name of the policy letter. Here we can find the year and number of the policy letter where they was revised. On the right side of the screen, you can see they was published first in May 26th and then revised in next year in March and then one more time and then one more time. So it means they have a footnote of this revision and you can see all the details and footnotes in the end of the policy letter. And it's important because sometimes you can find maybe old version of a policy letter. So to find the latest updated version, it's usually located on our website. And other important pieces for policy letter, it's the purpose of this policy letter. Usually it's allocated at the beginning of the policy letter to inform what the purpose of it. Here we can find this one is supplementing program of additional support of Ukraine, and have some additional revision here so we can understand that what this policy will talking about. And last pieces, it's the dates. It's a key to follow any eligibility policy letter. It's dates of eligible eligible categories, what term they eligible to receive a benefit. For example, here it's listed February 24th, 2022 up to September 2024. You usually can find these dates inside of a policy letter. And then I will pass it to Jasmine again.
Thank you. All right, so we'll go over eligibility and documentation. I know this slide is very overwhelming, but we'll try to make it simple. So you can see that any Afghan humanitarian parolee who arrived between July 31st, 2021 and September 30th, 2023 is eligible for services. The spouses, children, and parents of parolees who arrived in the initial eligibility window of July 31st, 2021 are also eligible. I know this is very confusing because it says September 30th, 2023, but that just means that in addition to that initial eligibility window, they are also eligible between September 30th, 2023 and till now. Okay, next slide, please. And yes, we'll be sharing the presentation. I'm also going to share the eligibility tables with you in the chat so you have all of them. Could you go back one? Sorry. Okay, I see. Sorry. Next slide. Okay, so ORR eligible Afghan refugees, such as SIVs, are also eligible up until 5 years after the date of arrival. And those who have been granted asylum are also eligible for 5 years after the date that they've been granted asylum. Next slide, please. Okay, and just a special final note on Afghans is that they can continue to receive ORR services while their applications for parole, asylum, or any other adjustment of status are pending. And if they've submitted a reparole, asylum, or adjustment of status application prior to the expiration of their parole. So essentially, if an Afghan who came here as a parolee and also is applying for asylum, so technically they're an asylum seeker, but if they have applied for asylum prior to the expiration of their parole, they are still eligible for services. Next slide. Okay, I'm not going to go into this too much, but I will send it to you in the chat so you have a copy of it, but just some documents to look for, often the I-94 or employment authorization, and they have different codes, which we'll show some examples of in a moment. But I'll let Irina go ahead and talk about the ERC eligibility, and I'm going to send you the tables for both RC and ERC eligibility in the chat. I think we can, yeah.
Your student eligibility dates. I know it's a lot of information to carry on, but I think the most important it's this is eligibility program for Ukrainians and non-Ukrainians, children and their family displaced from Ukraine, and or are create this eligibility from a birth. So it could be kids who was born in Ukraine until the age 19, or who is older than 19, but they have been enrolled in high school or equivalent on high school equivalent program in United States. And we have a few categories here. It's like Ukrainian humanitarian parolees who was being receive a status as known also as UHP. they came in the United States after February 2022 until September 2024. And so it means individuals who came after this period of time, September 13th, they are not eligible for this specific program, but I will continue other group who can be connected with this group. And second group, it's first one, it was for like Ukrainian citizenship and non-Ukrainians individual, but who was habited and residents in Ukraine and as well was being parole in the United States in the same status, but it could be different passports. You know, in Ukraine, we have not only Ukrainians, we have Armenians, we have Russians, we have a Crimean Tatar and other nationalities as well. And for third category, it's a spouse or child individual who described in this first and second section who came after September 2023. So they might be eligible for this program if they find connection with these two groups. And the same with the parents and legal guardian or primary caregiver, they can be receiving benefits if they reconnect with these first two categories. And about the parole or pending status, it's similar to Afghan parolees. If students, family members, they apply for their parole one day before the initial parole expired, they can continue to receive the services. And once they receive the new parole, they will be just updated you. And yeah, if they parole expired and they haven't been applied for the program, they will be not eligible, unfortunately. But I know there are many cases who don't have a chance to apply for parole. It's the nuances, but maybe we have more time in Q&A and discuss like special cases. Who have been not received a parole, they can apply even for expiration day and might have received the status as well if they was holding like TPS or the legal statuses. But it's all details. And eligible documentation for UHP holders, it's usually Form I-94, could be foreign passport with a stamp of U4U program or UHP or DT. Also, it could be employment authorization with a special code. C11 is special code for refugees and parolees in the United States. And the same for non-Ukrainian individuals. They can show a proof with passport and have a stamp in the passport with UHP or U4U or other status. For example, if it's not Ukrainian citizen, they might don't have U4U. But if they can prove they was resident in Ukraine before February 24, 2022, they can be also eligible for this program. And sample of the documentation, Form I-94. What the important pieces to follow, it's admission date, which is very important. We know that this particular student's family member will be eligible. They have their name, last name, birth of date, passport number, and class of admission. Yeah, and I know some life hacks as well. If you don't have I-94, but you have, for example, a passport and you know date of birth of kids or family member, you can actually get this information online on a official website. And the same with employment authorization. This copy shows of a category of eligibility group. It's C11, and also alien number, which Jasmine was talking before. This will usually shows on this section. Oops. And we see valid like which date and card of expiration as well. But the most important it's to see a category here and alien number as needed. And the same for green card holders. They have alien numbers here and category for a special immigrant's visa here. And if you're looking for passport as a proof of eligibility, you can see a stamp, something like that, like a paroled, and they say like UHP or DT or humanitarian paroles and proof of stamps. For example, some individual who don't have a passport, they may receive a stamp from official DHC services like this. Yeah, and I hope this was helpful. And so I think we will have some time for discussion. If you have special questions, we'll help you to navigate in this eligibility navigation, and hopefully it was helpful for you.
Is my volume better or worse right now? Good. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Arena and Jasmine. There are some questions that are coming in through the chat. There's a follow-up question regarding do they qualify for five years? And that was a follow-up to the original question. If an Afghan student entered the US between July 2021 to September 2023, or if they entered anytime after September of 2023 to the present, they are still eligible, and you said correct. And they qualify for 5 years is the question.
Yeah, so I believe that's correct. However, for the RC and ERC programs, this programming will be implemented through, I believe it's July of 2026. So they should be eligible for the duration of the programs.